Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast, the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. My name is Erik Stenbakken. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me is Kristi. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kristi Kandel. I am the co-host of the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast. And today I'm excited to introduce our first guest. I met Vish through one of our real estate groups, and we started chatting about our different projects. And we thought, well, he has quite a plethora of stories from his real estate investing experience. Why don't you start us off and tell us who you are and where you're at in the world, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Thank you, Erik, and thank you, Kristi, and it's great to be on the show. Well, my name is Vish Muni. I'm from Austin, Texas. I've been a full-time real estate investor the last 3 years. My background is I'm an IT professional. So in the last 3 years, I've been full-time, but prior to that, I started investing in 2009. But it's never been a perfect journey. But nevertheless, and since I'm heavily into fitness and personal development, I see every challenge, every setback as feedback, and I think there's no end to it. It's exciting.
Right. Simon Sinek, the infinite game. It's just that there's always something more to do. Now, in your little pre-intro here, Vish, it says that you like to travel. We can tell that you like working out here. Where is some place I just have to see that you think maybe I haven't seen? Just a cool place I need to go.
Well, if you've been to Greece, there's a place called Crete in Greece. Now, what is so great about that place is the whole terrain is rugged. There's no tourists, not much of tourists, and it's perfect because like most of the places we travel, we want to go where it's pretty popular, where you see pictures on Instagram, on social media, and you want to go there, take a selfie or take a picture and write about it. But I don't like to brag about my travels because the travel is extremely personal. I like to experience it. I like to blend in with the locals. And I'm not very much of an organized tour guy. When somebody says you have 5 minutes to take pictures, you have 5 minutes to walk around. No.
You're preaching to the choir there. My favorite travel experiences are where we have a local who's from that country or from that city, and we get the local experience that is not that tourist one. Erik, I'm pretty sure you just came back from a trip, and I'm guessing it was not filled with tour guides.
We just got back from a few days in Maui. We got a property there, so we were doing a little bit of work there. And while I was there, I took a couple hikes. One of the hikes had dozens and dozens of people, girls posing in front of the waterfall doing the Instagram thing. So I saw that. But I went on another hike also through an entire volcano. And in the 6.5 hours we were hiking that almost 12 miles, we saw at most one human being per hour. That was it.
That's incredible.
I get it. I like it. So there are places, even in popular places like Greece, which I have not been to, and Maui, where you can avoid the crowds. Vish, you obviously see things here as kind of a competition, and a competition, it sounds like, with yourself, not so much just other people. Tell me just a little bit about your fitness and competition and so on like that, and how that maybe shapes your mindset when it comes to real estate investing.
Well, I'm a big enthusiast about fitness and personal development, and I see a lot of parallels between the fitness, personal development, and real estate investing. And there is only so much you could prepare for anything because the rest is you got to just take it as it comes. But which one is extremely close to investing is if you're doing obstacle races, like I do. I'm a big fan of Spartan Races because what is so great about it is every obstacle is different. And just because you can do one, that doesn't mean you can do the other obstacles. So you got to train differently. Not only training, you got to have a different mindset altogether to deal with problems. Because there is no failure there. There's absolutely no failure. You're giving your best shot. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But the key is, did you give it all you had? Yes, I did. So I feel real estate is more or less the same. You can only prepare so much, but if you don't take action, you don't even know whether you're in the race in the first place.
You started, it sounds like a year before I got started. What was your entrance into real estate investing, and where did that go?
Well, back in 2009, me and my wife, when we moved to Texas, and I used to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been a lifetime athlete. I played soccer all my life, and then once you get married and once you have kids, and so you have 3 hours of luxury of playing soccer and the post-game analysis, the beer meeting is all over. So the time is gone. Okay, so that is when I took up running marathons. Running is extremely boring. One foot in front of another, you're not running behind anything, you're not chasing behind anything. So, but how I got started is, so me and my wife liked walking the open houses all the time. We were just out of curiosity. So we are sort of, in a way, we call ourselves a little nerdy because we don't like watching TV, we don't like going to movies. All we like is hanging around at the coffee shop and network and go sit in Barnes and Noble Borders. I don't think they're still existing anymore, but we like to read. We like to read and meet new people. So we got passionate about real estate because my grandfather back in India had about close to 40 rental properties, which after 50 years we still have them. So real estate has been within me, and rest of my family is already in real estate. And when I came to US, the first thing I decided is I'm not going to be a landlord anymore. I don't want to be a landlord. I only want to be an investor. So with that in mind, so me and my wife in 2009, we set up a company called Duplexaholics, and we still have that company. So how did we come up with that name? So we want to invest in one property a year as long as possible. But it sounds pretty simple. One property a year, no big deal, right? So it got started off pretty well. We did 3, 4 properties, and then the reality starts to set in.
And when you wanted to do that and you named it Duplexaholics, I assume you were buying duplexes. Was this in your backyard market? How did you pick your market from that aspect?
Well, in 2009, the whole market has, when we moved to Texas, so we wanted to buy a property. We thought we'll do some house hacking. We want to buy a duplex. We want to stay on one side and rent out the other side. So with that in mind, we started looking for properties. But we didn't want to rush into it by paying a retail price. So we want to find a good deal. So we rented an apartment for 6 months only, not in 1 year. So we had to pay premium. So we thought it's better than hanging around an apartment forever. So we found an apartment right in Round Rock, Austin. So we must have looked about close to about 70 to 80 properties, because when you're given too many choices, it's difficult to pick the right one. So that was another thing I tell people. Well, if you want to pick, don't look at so many. Just it's like going to a buffet. You don't know what to eat. You have so many choices, right? So I mean, we picked all the properties in our own backyard. We didn't go too far.
Okay. So you started with duplexes. Is that you stopped with duplexes? You just bought one a year and that's the end of the story? And now you're up to a dozen or two?
No, things get really interesting after year number 4. So I had maxed out all my credit cards, and I had negotiated with the banks for line of credit, and I tapped into that also. And I leveraged so much because I'd only put down 15%, because I negotiated with the banks to put down only 15%. And I wasn't managing any of this property, so I had to pay big fees for property management. Once in US, I didn't want to be a landlord anymore because of all the headaches what I've had back in India. So that being said, and the banks started telling me no more money, but you got to revisit. So that is where buying new properties came to a grinding halt after year number 4.
At that point, how many properties had you purchased? Because there's different information out there that you can get 4 loans, that you can get up to 10 loans that are 30-year fixed. Where were you at in that journey, and what type of banks were you using? Were they regional? Were they the big guys?
They were all regional banks. And the reason why I went with the regional banks is basically when we bought a first property, me and my wife didn't know anything. So we set up an LLC, and we were told that you need to buy property in an So I knew two bank managers, and I go to them, and the first thing they ask me, do you have any experience? I tell them I don't have any experience. So I'm sorry, I can't give you money. So went to the next bank. So the next bank asked, do you have any experience managing this kind of properties? I told no. And so it goes one, two, three, almost about more than 10 banks. But there's something which caught my attention is after 10 banks rejected me, I figured out there was a pattern in what kind of questions they were asking. Number one, they were asking, have you done any deals in the past? No. Have you bought any properties in this company? No. Have you bought any properties in Texas? No. So finally on the bank number 12 or 13, I was able to get a meeting with the bank manager. So I asked him, really, listen, you're the 13th guy whom I'm talking to. So what does it take for me to get a mortgage on this, for you to lend me? And that is when he told, listen, because of all these things, nobody wants to give you money. Okay. So he walked me through the excuses, everything, whatever I had. So, and then he told, I want you to give me a personal guarantee because this is going to be the first time you'll be lending. And that is how we are able to secure the first funding on the property. And that was a big learning experience. And after that, I always keep a property packet or a funding packet ready with me at all times.
That's such a great lesson for everyone to understand is one, that shows your perseverance there. That shows your resilience to not quit. So many people would have reached out to one bank and stopped, and maybe two banks, but then thought, oh, I'm not bankable. I'm just going to give up on real estate investing. I had a very similar experience where I learned I had to shop lenders. One was because of high fire risk area, and another was because it was a different type of loan on a property, and we went through 12 lenders. Yeah, that's amazing, the resilience you showed there.
This is really important. A lot of people jumped into real estate in 2020, 2021, 2022. And now they're bemoaning like, oh, it's so hard now. 2024 was hard and 2025 is just like, it's not. Hey, guess what? It was not easy in 2010 either. Banks were not just, they weren't just shucking out money to everyone who showed up. See, there's this idea that, oh, it was easy back then. And guess what? It has never been easy. There's always some sort of obstacle. Either the banks are like, no, we got burned 2 years ago and we're not going to lend any more money. It's hard. Or it's like, hey, easy money. But guess what? Everyone else is out buying too. And so now you're bidding and you're paying over list. My point here is that it's never easy. Like I climb mountains here, and in Colorado, we got what's called 14ers. Those are mountains that are over 14,000 feet high. And guess what? People will ask me like, well, what's an easy one? I was like, there is no easy one. It's 14,000 feet high. Like it's just not easy. And this is a thing that I think for our listeners to understand is that these things are challenging. And like Vish just told us earlier, the challenges are different. Just like in his obstacle racing. Oh, you get through one. Oh, that was easy. Well, guess what? There's something else ahead of you. So Vish, what came next? You're starting your duplex stuff. You're figured out how to get some loans. Yeah, I assume you got some duplexes. And what was next in your journey?
So the next was basically what we had to do is I figured out how the banks operated. And then I started building relationships with the local banks only. And like the credit unions. So no more Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or Chase Bank. I stress on the relationships, what you have with the lenders makes all the difference. And yes. In fact, some of the lenders, I follow them whichever bank they go. I give them business all the time. And because they're in a way indirect mentors to me, because they tell me, listen, don't buy this. We don't fund this project. But I tell them, is it okay if I take it to another bank? And they would say, yeah, you can take it anywhere else. And they're the ones who are giving me referrals. You have to talk to this manager, talk to this manager.
That's another key point right there is each bank has their own lending profile. And there could be that this bank will give this type of loan, but when they get to a certain point of the year, they've already issued that number of loans. So they're not going to approve you regardless.
Yeah, so then I figured out the main reason why they were not lending me money the first time, because I didn't have a primary residence. There was no collateral for them. I was still renting, and I want to buy a duplex as an investment property, not even as a primary residence. The key is the banks want to know, are you going to stay put in one place or do you have a primary residence? Because unless you have a huge net worth or you're earning $1 million, the banks will not want to give you money. Over a period of time, I figured out what does it take. But nevertheless, what Erik was telling, the challenges are different at all the time. But it is all on us because we level up all the time. If it is too easy, we move on to the next one. If it is too easy, we say, well, I think I need to do something else.
All right. So tell us what was next.
Well, the next is, so I did that one for 10 years and then I figured out, well, I need to do something different because I got carried away by looking at all the social media and people talking about what the kind of lifestyle they have investing, being a real estate investor. I was nowhere close to that. And I had to figure out what kind of properties are all these people buying. So they were buying apartment complexes, they were buying commercial properties. And the effort was the same, but I didn't know how to buy an apartment complex. So I had to educate myself. So I had to network. And I did meet a few good mentors out there in Austin. And I invested in a few apartment deals as LP, limited partners, and I learned apartment investing. And I invested in about 7 apartments as a GP and LP. And I learned that business, how it is done, how the syndication models work. But that was not as exciting as what I thought it would be. And the returns on it were not that great because I think I partnered with the wrong people. In other words, partnered with the wrong people. And I got carried away again by their presentations, by their talks, and people were bragging about they have 1,000 units, 2,000 units. Now, looking back, those numbers doesn't mean anything. Absolutely. Even if you have 10,000 units, it doesn't mean anything.
Erik, we don't know anything about that, right?
Yeah, we did a whole show on how social media misleads us. So I want you to unpack a little bit of that because it's amazing. Boy, they pull out the table and they've got the shells, they got the shells all moving around and where's the ball? Where's the ball? And you're just wondering like, what's going on? What's going on? And we get so starstruck with these things that we don't understand. I was at a real estate conference and somebody asked a question. They were in the front row. We're like, excuse me. I own 1,200 units and I have blah, blah, blah. And they asked the question. Well, the person next to me said, she doesn't own 1,200 units. She bought into the same syndication that I do. She owns like 1/500th share of 1,200 units, right? So I want you to, Vish, tell us a little bit about how can it possibly be that someone can put forward this presentation with 1,000 units and it sounds like you're going to get a Maserati next week? How can that not be true?
Well, the key is there are some good operators, there are some bad operators. Okay, that is part of that is the nature of the business. I mean, there's a good and bad, so that is how things get balanced out. But the presentations make sense to people like me. Written on my forehead, they say, I'm a first-time investor. I get carried away. Look at me. So their target market is first-timers, people like me who get excited looking at all these things. So not the educated, not the experienced people. But how do they have that lifestyle is nobody knows unless you unpack or unless you go behind the scenes to find out. Did they rent it for the day or did they just do a Photoshop? Are they really living the lifestyle what they're preaching? Or
That's right.
Just for the media? Nobody knows the story. So I figured out at the end of the day, even if I could say that at one point I had 3,000 units, apartments. But how much did I really own? What is the share? The 3,000. I could have put 25,000 and say I own 3,000 apartments, right? But I figured out pretty fast that, this is all BS. All I need is a cash flow. I don't care even if I have 2 doors, as long as I get the cash flow.
And that's a Good point. And it's not that syndications don't work. If you have a lot of capital, if you don't have a lot of time. I know when I was first exploring syndications years ago, I asked a syndication attorney, why would I be an LP in a deal if I could be the GP or I could do my own development projects and make more money? The thought is if you have an experienced operator, then you save your time and it opens doors to new markets and new opportunities. But if you're an investor, if you're a real estate entrepreneur, you are going to make way more money and be way more successful and have a better quality of life if you do your own deals direct, which it sounds like you went to. So you started with duplexes, you tried out syndications to see how that glamorous world was, and now what happened next?
So now my next plan of action is I would still do syndications, but totally different on my terms. I would do syndications on my terms, on my deals only. To put the whole syndication, like you buying a flight ticket and traveling from New York to Florida. It's like you have choices out there. You could be a pilot, you could be a flight attendant, or you could just be a passenger, just sit back and enjoy the ride. So all the LPs, that's all they do. That is why they have so many limitations. You just bought a flight ticket just to sit back and enjoy. So you got no rights to talk. You can't complain. You just sit back. But I want to be the pilot moving forward. That way, it's up to me how I take off and where I land.
So what assets are you in right now? What assets are you piloting?
What I figured out is I've done single family, I've done duplexes, I've done fourplex, and I've done short-term rentals and what an apartment complex is. But what I'm looking at now is TripleNet properties, and so there are a couple of major things which attracted me to doing this TripleNet commercial deals. Number one is I'll be dealing with B2B, business to business. I'll be dealing with the business operators, no more with the end users or the consumers. And then, into the interest of my tenant, to stay as long as possible. So they're unlike the apartment owners, they're not there for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years because life events happen. They want to downsize, they want to upgrade, they want to move to a different school district. Somebody retires, somebody moves out, somebody is becoming an empty nester. So you don't have all those excuses in a commercial property. They're running a business, so they will take care of your place. I mean, to a large extent.
And specific to your TripleNet lease options, you're not saying TripleNet, let me have a shopping center and I'll have retail tenants. Your idea is different, more in the industrial realm?
So within TripleNet, I figured out there are 10,000 things you can do. But within TripleNet, I'm only focusing on industrial outdoor storages. That could be of warehouses, a distribution center, a cold storage, or just outdoor storage. And that is one option. And the next is the retail. So within retail, you could have office or you could have medical offices. So you could have retail, medical offices, and office. So these are the things. Two asset classes, what I'm looking at within TripleNet. And apart from that, I have another strategy which I'm wanting to do is I'm also getting into a little bit of development. All my vacations have been to tropical destinations, and I like to be close to a beach because I feel going to any bigger cities, they're all the same. I like to be close to nature, and that's why we prefer tropical destinations. In Texas, there's a place called Corpus Christi. So we are doing some ground up development out there on 4 single family lots. It's the small casitas. So that is by something new which are trying out. So we just closed in on 1 lot. I should be closing in another one in a few weeks. So that is something new.
So Vish, you talked about the challenges, outrunning failures. That sounds like failures are somewhat inevitable at some time. Like there's going to be challenges. Can you walk us through a challenge that you've had in investing, what that was like to get into it, how you got into it, what you were thinking during that, and how you got through that?
Well, the first duplex what we bought at Round Rock. And the first challenge was working with the lender. Somebody had to give us money to buy. That was the first challenge to get someone to buy. So I did speak to more than 10 lenders. So I learned a lot from that. No giving up there, no looking back. So I figured out how to get money and closed onto the deal. So closing on the deal was the first obstacle which we crossed. And the next was when we bought this duplex, there was already one tenant in it. So one tenant was there for almost over a year. And that was the first time we were buying. So we didn't know what kind of due diligence to do. So we were happy we got another second tenant. And then after 2 months, we have the tenant was already there, stopped paying rent. And then so that went on for 15 days or 1 month. And we have this property manager out there who's walking to the court and then who's representing the landlord on, and he's charging money to us every time he goes there. So, and we're losing money there. So, and then one day we get an eviction notice, and by the time we show up on the doorstep, the tenant has packed the bags and gone. It looked like it's a very experienced tenant. So the tenant knew what they were doing. Exactly. So they dragged their feet as long as possible, and they knew exactly when the sheriff is going to show up on the doorstep, and they were gone. Okay. Within 6 months, I was down by almost $4,000 in terms of rent and all the legal fees. So I would put it at $5,000. So I lost money on an average of $1,000 a month. So then that was not the end of it. And then we go into the apartment. So it's completely destroyed on the inside. So that costed me another $5,000. If I'm buying any properties, I tell them I'd rather have it vacant, or the tenant has to be on a month-to-month only. So that is my condition right now. But I did overcome that. But the key is real estate, you don't lose money. If you lose money when you buy the property, but it depends on how long you hold it and what value you add along the journey, where you make money. So that property we bought for $165 in 2009, and we sold in 2020 for $450.
Okay, so you're bringing up a really good point here, is that on the short term, things were really difficult and hard. And if you had quit at the end of that 6-month period, you would have been down, almost $10,000 between damages and lost rent and so on like that. So real estate is a little bit different than crypto in the sense that your house was still there, right? It's just like, and over time, and I don't know crypto, so I'm not going to diss that. But my point is that you held on to it, and real estate just has this habit of sticking around, of just being there. And over time, that asset built in appreciation. Now, quick question for you. Do you think you made more in rent or in appreciation on that property?
I think it all depends what you mean more, because a more could be in terms of experience, in terms of confidence. I did get a lot of out of it. So that if you equate that into money, I would probably put it as probably 200K or 300K of learning experience itself right there.
Okay, so I want you to stop right there, and I want you to unpack that. So what you're saying is that losing and having a challenge was valuable? Tell me more about that.
Yes, because it goes back to you doing your obstacle races. And just because you fall off one obstacle, that doesn't mean you're a loser. That means you know what is your weak points. You know what you need to work on. And that's exactly what happens in this case. Because in this case, the tenant had destroyed the whole place and they stopped paying after a few months. So that in itself was a learning experience right there. The next property I bought, I'd rather have it vacant, or the tenant has to be on a month-to-month lease. And I have the right to extend the lease or not extend the lease. And I want to walk the properties before I buy, which I did not do in the first time. So that in itself is a learning experience right there.
That's awesome. So what have you learned in the commercial space? What lessons have you learned there, and can you share?
So in TripleNet, I've not done too many deals, but I've been an LP on a few TripleNet deals. But in terms of education, there's a lot of things. What I've learned is a few things which are extremely critical is the type of tenant makes all the difference. And if it's a national tenant, whether it's a regional tenant, or whether it's a mom and pop. And who guarantees the lease makes a big difference. If you are the brand Starbucks sounds pretty good because I could go around telling people, hey, I have a tenant to Starbucks for the next 15 years. I don't need to worry. But once you start looking into the contracts, that is where the trouble starts. Starbucks negotiates really hard. So they're going to tell you, listen, there's no rent escalation. If you want me to stay there, I would stay. Otherwise, I would move. So what choice do you have?
Having been on the other side where we have been the developer negotiating
Right.
those work letters, those letters of
Right.
intent and those leases with Starbucks, McDonald's, CVS, with all the national tenants, it's Cody Sanchez says it's best that a deal is not just about the price. It's about the terms. You can have whatever price you want,
Right.
but I
Right.
want my terms, especially when negotiating with tenants. And this is where people think, oh, I just want a national tenant and I'm good to go. You better have a good attorney to help you negotiate those terms so you understand what each of those means to set yourself up not only to collect that cash flow, but you've got to think, if I sell this property, someone is going to evaluate what's left on that lease lifespan, the extensions that are built on. It's just a different game of leveling up for sure.
Right. It pushes you to think creatively, think outside the box. Because initially I used to think that, oh, it's Starbucks, it's CVS, it's Walgreens, so let me buy this. And what I figured out is I need to associate myself with the right people who have already done this kind of business and learn from them. Okay, I shouldn't get excited. I shouldn't jump into these deals. And what happens if they signed a 10-year lease and year number 6, they decide not to pay you? What's going to happen after that? Can you kick them out? Or can you still get money? But there are multiple ways. So that is why having a right real estate lawyer from the day one who looks into all the details is the key. But then on the flip side, I figured out there are a lot of people wanting to buy into these kind of deals. So why do I need to hold on to that? I'm a value add investor. If I don't see any value, if I can't add any value, I might as well sell it to them. Because there are people who want this kind of tenants. So that's what I decided. It's like you're buying a fully loaded car. A fully loaded car has the max value when you sell it right away, there and then. But the longer you wait, the less value you're going to get.
Yeah. So Vish, as we head here towards the end here, I want to hear about your mindset. It sounds like you've had some opportunities that you could have quit and said, that's just how it goes. I tried, and no one would have faulted you for it. They'd have said, well, he gave it a good shot and we can understand why he quit, but you didn't quit. How do you keep yourself focused, whether it's athletics or investing? And maybe it's the same answer. How do you keep yourself focused and positive? And how important is mindset? Because really, I mean, on a technical scale, you just have to know what things to put down and what buttons to push and so on like that. That's a technical skill. Where does mindset come in to facing the unknown or setbacks?
So the first and foremost, you'll have to stop pleasing people. That is number one. Because if I'm out here just to impress other people, so which means I've lost even before the race started. So that is number one. And that's extremely difficult to get past the situation because we all want to please somebody or the other. I mean, I want to keep my parents happy when I was growing up. And after that, I want to keep my friends happy. And after that, I want to keep my wife, my daughter, my son, my dog, everybody happy. But I'm not living my life because so sooner or later, once you realize, listen, I'm keeping everybody happy. Am I happy at the end of the day? No. So that is the first thing you got to notice. And then number two is having the right tools for whatever you're doing. Like if you go hiking, you need to have a proper gear, proper shoes, proper clothes, proper walking sticks, and hiking, the hydration pack. The same goes with anything, whatever I do. If I go to the gym, if I'm doing obstacle races, I can't wear my work boots and go do that obstacle race, which means you need to have different set of tools for different things. The same goes with investing. I need to surround myself with the right people and with the right tools. And I can only have access to the right tools only if I surround myself with the right people who have already been there. Like if I want to play beach volleyball, I need to show up on the beach, not at the gym, and not at the swimming pool, right? So the right location with the right people makes all the difference. And like there's a saying, if you hang around with the barber shop long enough, sooner or later you're going to get a haircut. So that way you got to be at the right people, the right environment makes all the difference. So that's one thing I learned the hard way.
Yeah, I saw a quote by James Clear just the other day. It said, "Really, there really is only one shortcut to success, and that is through people who've been there ahead of you." Now, that's not the exact quote, but that's the gist of it, is that by mentoring with someone, or in your case, like hanging around the barbershop, you get to know things. You get to meet the people and the things that those people can do. I just have to say, I used to hear this on podcasts and I'd say, you can't get to know a banker and like that makes a difference. And you know what? After years of being in this myself, I can say it is true. It is absolutely true, is that the people you know, and you know what they want, to your banker story here. After a while, you're like, well, bankers want to know this. Well, if I get that all lined up ahead of time and I give them the answers before they ask, hey, wow, guess what happens? Doors open, money happens. And I've had that happen with a banker. Deal was totally going south. Things just looked like we were going to miss a closing. And I called a banker I had done several other deals with. And I said, hey, Rodney, what can we do here? He says, well, I know your situation and I know what's going on here. We'll just have you put together a few things for me. And he had that loan closed in, I think it was under a week. Right? That's by knowing the right people. Any other tips you want to pass along?
Well, what I strongly feel is having the right tools and being around the right people. Like if you want to have a surgery on your knee, what doctor are you going to? Probably a regular doctor, or you want the best of the doctors to work on you, right? And so you need to hang around. You need to identify who are the key people who are already there where you want to go. You only take advice from them, not from anybody else. I mean, a lot of people from your family who are always putting you down. They don't mean anything bad for you. They're more worried for you because they lack the knowledge because they've never been there. So that is why they tell you, I mean, out of concern for you, not because they want to bring you down. But in other words, stop taking advice from anybody and everybody in the world, because a lot of people are either jealous and some people really don't want you to do anything better than them. And some people don't want you to travel anywhere. They want you to take 2 steps back, not forward. And then everything comes down to, at the end of the day, relationships. You need to pay extreme importance to how you build those relationships and how you hold on to them and how you maintain them. Because without the relationships, everything is going to collapse sooner or later.
That is so true. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. And when you have that know, like, and trust, you're going to do more than just business with people. So you're going to have fun and go snowboarding or play beach volleyball or go on a 14er. So yeah, that's such a true point, that it's all about relationships.
It is.
And that's a process, because people say, oh, why do people hang around with you all the time? What do you do? How did you do that? So I didn't do anything. Just be yourself and have that abundance mentality. I believe in giving a lot of things away for free. I don't expect anything in return, because I don't need 5 chairs. All I need is 1 chair. I mean, there are people who don't even have one, right? So I give away a lot of stuff, and I believe in giving back to the community wherever you live. Give whatever you have. You don't need to have $1 million.
Awesome. Vish, how can people get a hold of you if they want to make contact with a guy who's done it before? How do people reach out to you?
Well, they can hit me up on LinkedIn as Vish, Vishmuni. They can Google me and find me right there. That's the best way to reach me. Or otherwise, if they want to WhatsApp, my number is.
Awesome.
We'll make sure we include those in the show notes for people as well.
Right. Thank you.
Well, Vish, thanks for joining us on the Real Estate Pessimist. You've worked through some really cool things. Thank you for being our guest and sharing your experience and your persistence. We appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing with our audience.
Thanks for coming.